The alien marketplace was alive with noise. Glowing lights flickered, casting long shadows across the crowded streets. Strange creatures of every shape and size moved in every direction, shouting, bargaining, and laughing. The smell of burnt metal and strange alien spices filled the air, mingling with the scent of fear. Because today, the crowd was not just here for goods or food, they were here to watch misery. At the center of the chaos stood a small stage, illuminated by harsh white lights. On that stage, chained and trembling, was a poor alien widow, her skin pale, her hair matted, and her large eyes filled with terror. In her arms was her daughter, a tiny girl with wide eyes, who clung to her mother as if holding on could keep the darkness away. The crowd cheered cruelly, enjoying the display, expecting to see the widow sold like an object, an item with a price. The human trader, named Kale, entered the marketplace. Quietly, his boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. He had been sent here with strict instructions. His task was simple: ensure the widow and her daughter were sold to the highest bidder. Kale had seen many strange things in his life, but the sight of this mother and child made something stir inside him, something unfamiliar, something that whispered, perhaps he could do more than follow orders. The auctioneer, a tall alien with eyes like burning coals, raised his clawed hand. Who will bid for the widow and her child? He shouted, his voice echoing across the marketplace. The first bid came low, almost insulting. The widow flinched, holding her daughter tighter. Her voice trembled as she pleaded softly. But no one seemed to care. The crowd laughed at her fear. Excited by her helplessness, Kale stepped closer, watching the scene unfold. His mind raced. He could see the pain in the widow's eyes, and he felt an unexpected pull, a need to protect them. But he knew that any sudden action could draw attention, could make him a target of the alien authorities. He had to be careful. He had to think every second counted. And the crowd's excitement grew louder, hungry for chaos. Another bid came, higher this time. The widow gasped, her body trembling. The child's small hands clung to her mother's chest, her eyes wide with fear. Kale could feel his chest tighten. The idea of leaving them here, to face whoever won the auction, was unbearable. His heart told him to act, but his mind warned him. This was dangerous, perhaps deadly. The auctioneer's voice boomed. Do I hear more? This is no ordinary sale. Friends, this is the chance to own a family, a mother and her child. You think them weak, but they carry value beyond measure. The crowd shouted in approval, their voices overlapping. The widow bowed her head, whispering to her daughter, "Stay quiet, my love, stay quiet. It will be over soon." Kale felt a surge of anger at the way they treated her words as a joke. Then, Kale did something unexpected, something that shocked the crowd. He stepped forward and raised his hand, signaling he wanted to place a bid. Murmurs spread through the marketplace. The crowd did not expect a human to intervene. Many humans were rare here, and few had the courage to approach the stage. Kale ignored the stares, ignoring the silent warnings. His mind made up. He would not let them suffer, not if he could prevent it. He placed his bid, higher than anyone expected. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing across his face. A human dares bid for them? He shouted, his voice slicing through the chaos. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others muttering. Kale's heart pounded as he continued to bid without hesitation. Each gesture a silent promise to the widow and her child. He was not just bidding with credits, he was bidding with courage, with the hope of saving them. The widow looked up, her eyes meeting Kale's. For a moment, fear mixed with a glimmer of hope. She had seen many humans, most had ignored her pain. But this one was different. Something in his calm determination told her he would not betray them. The child clung to her mother, sensing the change, her small body trembling less as she felt protection. The auctioneer growled, frustration clear in his voice. "This is no ordinary bid. Are you mad, human?" Kale did not answer. He simply placed the final bid, the one that would ensure they belonged to him. At least for now. The crowd erupted, some shouting in anger, some whispering in awe. The widow and her daughter were no longer for sale to the highest bidder. They had a chance, a small hope, that perhaps they were not doomed after all. Cale helped the widow and her daughter down from the stage. Careful of the guards' eyes, he whispered to them, "You are safe with me." And for the first time, the widow allowed herself to believe it. The marketplace continued to buzz with noise and chaos, but Cale's focus was clear. Protect them, survive, and somehow escape. In that moment, the human realized that this simple act of courage, this choice to defy expectation, would change everything. Not just for him, but for the widow and her child, and perhaps for the entire alien marketplace that had never seen mercy. Asterisk, the alien marketplace still buzzed with chaos, but Cale moved carefully, guiding the widow and her daughter through narrow alleys, neon lights flickering above, casting long shifting shadows. Every step was dangerous. Guards patrolled the streets with sharp eyes, and Cale knew one wrong move could end everything. The widow clutched her daughter tightly, whispering, "Please, human, just take us away from this place." And Cale felt a heavy weight in his chest, the responsibility of their lives pressing down on him. They reached a small hidden corridor behind a stack of crates, and Cale paused, listening for footsteps. The child peeked out from her mother's arms, her eyes wide and curious. Cale gave her a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay. You're safe for now," he said, and the child's lips curled into a tiny, hopeful smile. Something Cale had not expected to see in such a place. Cale's mind raced as he thought about the rules he had been given. Sell them, earn the credits, follow orders. Yet the sight of their frightened faces made the rules feel meaningless. What kind of human could turn away now after seeing the fear in a child's eyes and the pain in a mother's heart? He realized that to truly be human, he had to act differently. He had to show courage and compassion. They moved quietly through the alleys, avoiding the main streets, the marketplace's noise fading behind them. But Cale knew this was only the beginning. They needed a place to hide, a safe place where no one could find them. The child clung tighter to her mother, sensing the tension. "Will they come back for us?" she whispered softly, and Cale felt his heart tighten. "I will protect you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "No one will harm you while I am here." Suddenly, a shadow moved across the alley, a figure watching them from above. Cale froze, his instincts sharp. The widow pressed herself closer to him, whispering, "They are watching us." Cale nodded, realizing they were not yet safe. Every moment counted. One misstep could alert the alien guards, or worse, the auctioneer's enforcers. He needed a plan fast. He led them to a quiet part of the city, an abandoned building with broken windows and rusted doors. The inside smelled of dust and old metal, but it offered shelter, at least for now. Cale helped the widow and her daughter inside, closing the door carefully, and they collapsed onto the cold floor, exhausted from the chaos outside. "We are safe here," Cale said. Though he knew safety was temporary, "We can rest, but we must move before they find us." The widow finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Why are you helping us? You could have just taken the credits, just followed orders." Cale looked at her, his eyes serious. "Because it is wrong to treat life as a commodity. Because someone has to stand up and do what is right," he said, and the child's eyes sparkled, sensing a protector in him, someone different, someone human. Cale thought about the auction, about the cruel faces in the crowd, about the laughter that had accompanied their misery. He felt a surge of anger, but also determination. He had made a choice that went against the rules, against the expectations of the alien marketplace, but it was the right choice, and that mattered more than credits, more than fear. Hours passed as they rested, but Cale could not relax. He kept listening for sounds of pursuit, every creak in the old building, making him tense. The widow sat close to her daughter, comforting her. "It will be okay," she whispered. "I think he will protect us." Cale felt a quiet pride in that moment, knowing that the small human act of courage had given hope to 2 lives. as night fell. Kale knew they could not stay in the abandoned building forever. They needed a longer-term plan, somewhere far from the marketplace. Far from anyone who could claim them, he spoke quietly, outlining his plan. "We will move under the cover of darkness, find a safe place outside the city, and I will not let anyone take you." The widow nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. And the child hugged Kale's arm, a silent promise of trust, but danger was never far away. Even as they whispered and planned, Kale could feel it in the air, a presence watching, waiting, perhaps following. He knew the alien authorities would not forget the auction so easily. They would search, question, and maybe send bounty hunters. He tightened his grip on the small bag of supplies he had taken, ready for any threat. Kale also realized something important about himself. This act of defiance, this choice to protect instead of profit, was changing him. He felt stronger, braver, and more certain of his own humanity. The widow and her daughter were not just victims anymore. They were lives he had sworn to protect, and that promise carried more weight than any rule or order. Outside, the city lights glimmered, and somewhere far above, alien guards moved like shadows over rooftops. But inside the quiet room, there was a moment of peace, a moment of hope. The human had chosen them, and that choice had already begun to change their fate. Kale looked at the widow and her child, and for the first time, he felt that perhaps even in a cruel, chaotic galaxy, there was a place for courage, mercy, and love. The next day, their journey would begin, a dangerous path filled with unknowns. But for now, in this small broken room, they were together, safe under Kale's protection. And the audience, like Kale, waited to see what would happen next, knowing that one choice could alter everything. Asterisk, the first light of alien dawn crept through the broken windows, casting a pale glow on the dusty floor. Kale moved quietly, checking the makeshift locks on the old building. The widow stood beside her daughter, rubbing her eyes, and whispered, "Are we really safe now?" Kale shook his head slightly. "Not yet. We must leave before anyone finds us," he said, the seriousness in his voice making the child cling tighter to her mother. They packed what little they had, a few rations, a small bag of water, and some old blankets Kale had found in the building. Every movement was careful. Every sound could alert the patrolling guards outside. He led them through a hidden exit at the back, a narrow passage that twisted through the maze of the city's underbelly. The shadows seemed alive, twisting around them as they moved, and Kale felt the tension prickling his skin. The streets were quiet, but Kale knew the silence was dangerous. It could break at any moment. The child shivered, and he draped a blanket over her tiny shoulders. "We are almost free," he whispered, though even he was not sure what freedom would look like in this strange, hostile city. The widow followed closely, her eyes scanning every corner, ready to hide at a moment's notice. They reached the outer wall of the city, a massive structure with jagged edges, designed to keep intruders out and those inside trapped. Kale examined the wall, noting a small gap near the base, a narrow tunnel that seemed unused. "Through here," he said, guiding them carefully. "We must be very quiet." The child peeked out from the blanket, her wide eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and wonder. As they crawled through the tunnel, Kale could hear distant footsteps echoing above. Alien guards patrolled tirelessly, always searching for anything out of place. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum in his chest, and he forced himself to focus, one step at a time. The tunnel twisted and turned, and the air grew damp and heavy. But Kale never faltered. He had promised protection, and he would not break that promise. Finally, they emerged into a desolate area outside the city, a barren land stretching far into the horizon. Strange rocks and jagged cliffs marked the landscape, and the wind carried a sharp metallic smell. The widow looked around, her expression a mixture of relief and dread. "We are outside the city," she whispered. "But where will we go now?" Kale scanned the horizon. "We move east," he said, pointing toward distant hills. There is a small settlement where no one will know us." They walked quickly, but Kale knew the danger was far from over. Scouts and drones could be anywhere, watching, reporting, and he had to stay alert. Every shadow could hide a threat, and every sound could be a warning. The child held his hand tightly, and he squeezed hers, giving her silent courage. He felt her trust, and it strengthened his resolve. They were small and weak, but together they had a chance. As they moved through the rough terrain, Kale told them about the plan. "We will find shelter for the day, then travel at night," he said. "Night is safer. Shadows are our friends." The widow nodded, grateful for his guidance. The child asked softly, "Will they come for us?" Kale looked down at her. "If they do, we will face them together," he said, and the child smiled faintly, hope returning to her eyes. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. A drone scanning the ground nearby. Kale froze, signaling the widow and child to crouch behind a rock. The drone hovered close, its sensors glowing, and Kale held his breath. Calculating the risk, slowly, carefully, he led them along the edge of a cliff, keeping shadows between themselves and the drone. Every second felt like an eternity. But finally, the drone passed, and they could move again. Hours passed as they navigated the barren land, the sun climbing higher, the heat pressing down on them. Kale knew they could not rest in the open. He found a shallow cave hidden by rocks, a perfect place for shelter. They entered, the widow setting down the child gently. "Rest now," she whispered. "We are safe for a little while." Kale nodded, keeping watch at the entrance, his eyes scanning for any movement. Inside the cave, the child curled against her mother, and Kale finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. He thought about the auction, the cruel crowd, and the weight of his choice. He had chosen to protect instead of obey, and that choice had brought them here, into the unknown. But alive, the unknown was dangerous, but at least it was their own path. And Kale felt a small burning hope. Night would come soon, and with it, another leg of the journey. Kale knew the road ahead was filled with dangers, yet for the first time he felt in control. His courage had become their shield. His choice had become their hope. And as he looked at the sleeping child, Kale promised himself that no matter what came next, he would not fail them. He would lead them into safety, and the galaxy would have to reckon with one human who refused to follow cruelty. The night sky stretched over the barren land, stars flickering faintly above, casting a pale light on the jagged rocks. Kale led the widow and her daughter carefully, his senses alert to every sound. The wind whispered across the cliffs, carrying with it the distant hum of engines, a reminder that they were not alone. Every shadow seemed alive, every movement could mean danger. The child shivered, holding tightly to her mother. "Are they following us?" she whispered, her voice small and fearful. Kale knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We must assume they are," he said. "But we are smart, and we will stay ahead." The widow nodded silently, her eyes scanning the dark horizon. Anxiety etched deep into her features. Kale's mind raced as he thought about the possibilities. Scouts, enforcers, even bounty hunters could be sent to capture them. He needed to find a route that was both fast and safe, yet the terrain was unforgiving. Rocky ridges and steep slopes made movement slow. Every step could cause a misstep, a fall, or a noise that would betray them. As they crept along the edge of a cliff, Kale spotted movement in the distance, faint lights flickering across the rocks. They were far off but unmistakable search drones, scanning systematically. The widow gasped, clutching her child tightly. Kale pressed a finger to his lips, signaling them to remain silent. Every muscle in his body tensed as he led them behind a large boulder, the shadows swallowing them. The drone passed close enough for the child to hear its hum, a mechanical, steady sound that made her flinch. Kale held her close, whispering, "Breathe slowly, stay calm," and she mimicked his breathing, the rhythm steadying her fear. The widow peeked cautiously from behind the boulder, her eyes wide with worry. Kale shook his head slightly. "Not yet, we wait," he murmured, understanding that patience was as powerful as speed in this chase. Hours passed with careful steps, Kale guiding them through narrow passes and hidden paths, avoiding open plains and keeping to shadows. The child's tiny hand never left his, her trust in him complete. It was a heavy responsibility, but Kale embraced it fully. He had chosen to protect them, and that choice gave him purpose, something stronger than fear, stronger than any rule he had ever followed. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed across the rocks, a clatter of stones disturbed by movement. Kale froze, listening. The widow held her breath, and the child pressed close. Kale's eyes darted toward the source. A lone figure approaching, humanoid, but alien in appearance, carrying equipment that glowed faintly. It was a tracker, sent to locate them. Kale's mind raced. "We must move now," he whispered urgently, leading them down a narrow canyon, twisting. Through jagged rocks the tracker paused, scanning the area, and Kale pressed the widow and child against the wall, his body shielding them from view. The tracker's sensors flickered. Then it moved on, unaware of the path Kale had chosen. Relief washed over them briefly, but Kale knew it would not last. They had evaded one hunter, but the market's enforcers would not stop, and the drones would continue their sweep. "We need a longer-term plan," Kale said, his voice low. "A place where we can hide and gather supplies." The widow nodded, her face pale yet determined. The child's eyes reflected hope and trust, the light that kept Kale moving. They climbed higher, navigating steep slopes, Kale's boots slipping occasionally on loose rocks. Every misstep could mean a fall. Every moment was dangerous, but Kale refused to stop, refusing to let fear dominate. They reached a plateau with a small grove of strange alien trees. There, leaves glowing faintly in the moonlight, Kale led them into the grove, finding shelter among twisted roots and thick foliage. Inside the grove, Kale allowed them a brief rest. "Drink some water, eat a little," he said, handing them small rations. The widow whispered prayers of gratitude, and the child's eyes shone with cautious joy. Kale's gaze swept the horizon, the patrol lights still moving in the distance. He knew the night was far from over. The chase would continue. Relentless and unforgiving, Kale also realized that the pursuit was changing them, making them more alert, more careful, and more aware of the strength within themselves. Fear remained, but courage grew alongside it. Each step they took was a step toward freedom. Each obstacle they overcame was proof of resilience. Kale's resolve hardened, and he promised silently that no one would take them back to the market. As the first hints of dawn crept across the horizon, Kale prepared to move again. He whispered instructions to the widow, explaining the route and the signals they would use to stay together. The child clung to him, her tiny fingers gripping his sleeve. "We will keep moving," Kale said, his voice calm but determined. "And we will survive." The pursuit had intensified, and danger surrounded them, yet Kale felt a strange exhilaration, the thrill of defiance, the power of choice. They were no longer victims, they were survivors, guided by a human who refused to obey cruelty. And as the sun rose, painting the barren land in shades of gold and red, Kale led them onward, deeper into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Kale led the widow and her daughter further into the rocky landscape, the morning sun climbing slowly above the horizon, painting the jagged cliffs in orange and gold. Each step was careful, measured, for the land was treacherous and every loose stone could cause a fall. Yet Kale moved with confidence, his eyes scanning the horizon constantly, aware that any patrol or scout could appear at any moment. The child clung to her mother's side, her small hands trembling slightly, and Kale whispered, "Stay close. We are almost there." The widow nodded, grateful for Kale's protection. Yet worry never left her eyes. She glanced at the distant hills, searching for any signs of movement. But Kale's focus kept them moving forward, unbroken. After hours of climbing and careful navigation, Kale spotted a narrow crevice hidden behind a thick cluster of alien ferns. Its entrance was small, almost invisible, unless someone knew exactly where to look. "This might work," Kale said softly. "It could be a safe place to rest. Maybe even hide for a while." He led them through the ferns, and the crevice opened into a small hidden valley, sheltered by high cliffs on all sides. The valley was unlike anything the trio had seen. Strange glowing plants dotted the landscape, giving off a soft light even in the morning. A small stream ran through the center, clear and calm, providing water for anyone who sought refuge. Kale's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the value of this sanctuary. A place where patrols would struggle to find them. They entered cautiously, Kale scanning every corner. "We need to make it safe first," he said, pointing out possible hiding spots. "Those bushes can shield you from view, and this overhang will keep us dry if it rains." The widow nodded, helping her daughter settle near the stream, the child's wide eyes reflecting awe at the beauty around them. Kale gathered materials from the surroundings, fashioning a small barrier of rocks and ferns to conceal their shelter from aerial drones. Each placement was deliberate, each layer offering extra protection. The widow watched silently, impressed by his skill and determination. Her trust in him grew stronger, and she felt a small hope return to her heart. As they rested, Kale examined their supplies. Rations were low, and water needed careful management. "We will need to find more food soon," he said, "but for now, we must stay hidden and conserve our energy." The child tugged gently at his sleeve. "Are we safe here, Kale?" she asked softly. Her voice was small but filled with trust, and Kale smiled faintly. "For now, yes," he replied. "We can breathe, even if just a little." The quiet of the valley was almost unnatural. The only sounds were the soft flow of the stream and the distant calls of alien creatures. Kale remained alert, knowing that danger could approach at any moment. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every rustle of leaves could signal a scout. He positioned himself near the entrance, watching, listening, ready to act. Hours passed, and Kale finally allowed the widow and her daughter to relax. "Eat something, rest," he said. "We need strength for the journey ahead." They ate quietly, the child's eyes lighting up at the simple food, and the widow's hands trembled slightly as she drank water. Relief settled over them for the first time since escaping the auction. Kale studied the surroundings carefully, mapping out possible exit routes from the valley. "We will need to move again, but we can plan carefully," he said. "No rush, no mistakes," the widow nodded, trusting him completely. Her faith in Kale's abilities was unshakable now, and she silently vowed to follow his lead no matter what came next. Even in the sanctuary, danger was never far. Kale spotted strange tracks along the edge of the valley, unfamiliar but clearly made by someone searching. His heart raced slightly, but he remained calm. "They might be nearby," he whispered. "But they have not seen us." He signaled the widow and child to stay low, the child pressing close, feeling his strength. Night began to fall, the valley glowing softly under the light of alien flora. Kale made a small fire using dry wood and moss, careful to keep it low and concealed. The warmth offered comfort, and the widow's face relaxed for the first time in days. She watched the child sleep peacefully near the stream, and a tear slipped down her cheek. Gratitude and relief mixing together. Kale kept watch through the night, the quiet broken only by the occasional rustle of animals. His mind worked constantly, thinking about what lay ahead, escape routes, possible dangers, and the best ways to protect them. The pursuit had intensified, yet Kale felt confident. For the first time, he had found a place where they could breathe, even if just for a short while. As the first light of dawn touched the hidden valley, Kale allowed himself a small moment to relax. Knowing they had survived another night, the hidden sanctuary was not permanent, but it offered safety, hope, and a chance to regroup. And Kale knew that as long as he led them, they would survive. No matter the odds, he would not let them fall back into the hands of cruelty. The hidden sanctuary had provided safety for 2 days. the child laughing softly as she played near the glowing stream, and the widow tending to the small plants Cale had pointed out for food and shelter. Cale watched them both with a careful eye, ever alert, knowing that even in this quiet, danger was never far. The morning was clear, the sun bright on the cliffs, and Cale decided it was time to scout the surroundings. Ensure no patrols or scouts were nearby. He moved silently, his boots barely making a sound on the rocky ground. Every sense focused on the faintest signs of movement. The valley appeared calm, too calm, a thought that made Cale uneasy. When he returned to the sanctuary, he noticed something strange. The makeshift barrier he had built was slightly disturbed. Small footprints crossed the entrance, not made by the widow or child. Cale's heart tightened, realizing immediately that someone had entered without their knowledge. Someone had found them, and it could mean only one thing: betrayal. He gathered the widow and child quietly, whispering instructions to stay behind the rocks. "Do not move. Do not make a sound," Cale said, his voice calm but edged with tension. "I will see who it is." He crept toward the entrance, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. The footprints led to a familiar figure, a trader they had encountered at the auction. One Cale had trusted to provide supplies. The trader's face was hidden under a hood, but the posture, the slight sway, gave him away. Cale's jaw tightened. "You," he whispered under his breath. The trader froze when Cale appeared from the shadows, hands raised slightly, pretending innocence. I thought you were lost," the trader said. Voice shaky but clearly lying. Cale studied him carefully, noticing the glint of a tracking device in his hand. The device meant to locate the hidden valley and lead patrols directly to them. Betrayal was clear. The trader had led the hunters here in secret, hoping to claim a reward for the widow and child. Cale's mind raced, thinking of the danger they now faced. Every second could cost them their lives. Cale stepped closer, his presence commanding. "Why?" he demanded, eyes fixed on the trader. The trader swallowed hard. I had no choice," he said, voice trembling. "They promised me safety, wealth, everything if I found them." The widow gasped softly behind Cale, fear tightening her chest. The child clung to his leg, eyes wide with confusion and worry. Cale's hand went to the tracker, pulling it carefully from the trader's grasp. "You made the wrong choice," he said quietly, "and now you will fix it." The trader's eyes widened, realizing that Cale would not allow harm to come to the widow and child. Cale instructed him to disable the device, and to follow his plan exactly. "If you make a mistake, they will find you first," Cale warned, voice low and deadly. The trader, hands shaking, worked quickly to remove the signal, and Cale led him away from the sanctuary, keeping an eye on every approach. Every sound in the valley was magnified. Every movement of the wind or rustle of leaves seemed like a threat. Cale knew that betrayal was dangerous, but opportunity was now in his hands. He could use the trader to mislead the hunters, turn their pursuit into a trap. Hours passed, and Cale returned to the sanctuary, ensuring everything was safe again. The widow and child huddled near the stream, relief washing over them when they saw him. Cale knelt, brushing the child's hair back gently. "You are safe for now," he said. Though the tension in his body remained, danger had changed, but it was far from over. Cale realized that betrayal was not always obvious. Sometimes it came from those who seemed harmless, the traders, the merchants. Even people they had helped in the past could turn under pressure. It was a lesson Cale had learned before, but the stakes were higher now. They had to move, and quickly, before more hunters discovered the valley. As night fell, Cale prepared them for travel, explaining the new route he had planned. "We leave at dawn," he said, "and we do not stop until we reach a safer place." The widow nodded, trusting him completely. The child sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, Cale's eyes scanned the valley one last time, alert for any sign of movement. He felt the weight of responsibility heavily on his shoulders, but also a sense of determination. Betrayal had shown him the true danger. but it had also revealed an opportunity to outsmart their enemies. Kale knew that as long as he led them, as long as he stayed vigilant, they could survive. Even thrive in this dangerous world. The valley seemed quiet now. But Kale knew better. Shadows of hunters, the echo of betrayal, and the uncertainty of the journey ahead would test them further. Yet he was ready, stronger than fear, guided by a choice to protect, to fight, and to keep the widow and her daughter safe. And as the stars emerged above the hidden sanctuary, Kale made a silent promise. No one would break them. No one would take them back. Dawn broke over the horizon, painting the cliffs with pale gold, and Kale stirred quietly, checking the hidden valley one last time. The widow and her daughter were awake, the child rubbing her eyes sleepily, unaware of the danger that had almost reached them last night. Kale's gaze was steady, determined. He knew this journey would decide everything. They moved carefully through the valley, the traitor following silently behind. Still trembling from his own betrayal and fear, Kale's eyes scanned the skies and cliffs, alert for hunters, drones, or scouts. Every shadow could hide a threat, every rustle of leaves could signal danger, but Kale's resolve did not falter. Route Kale had chosen was difficult. Steep cliffs and narrow paths twisting between jagged rocks. He led them with precision, guiding the widow and child. One step at a time, keep close, he instructed, the child gripping her mother's hand tightly. Trust shining in her eyes, they moved slowly but steadily, each step taking them farther from the valley and closer to freedom. Hours passed, and the landscape began to change, the cliffs giving way to wide plains dotted with alien vegetation. The air felt fresher, lighter, carrying the scent of open land rather than trapped rocks. Kale allowed himself a small moment of relief, yet his senses remained alert. He knew hunters could appear at any moment, and betrayal was never far from mind. Suddenly, movement in the distance caught Kale's eye, a patrol of hunters riding low-hover skiffs, scanning the plains. He crouched, pulling the widow and child down behind a thick bush. "Stay low, stay silent," he whispered, heart racing. Kale studied the patrol, timing their movement carefully, calculating their path. Every second counted. One wrong move could mean capture or death. Kale took a deep breath, his mind clear, and made a decision. "We run when I signal," he said softly. Not before. The hunters passed within sight, but did not notice the hidden trio. Kale waited until their backs were turned, then led them in a sprint across a narrow ridge, their feet pounding the ground, hearts racing, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The child stumbled once, and Kale's hand was there instantly, steadying her. "You are safe," he whispered, more for himself than her. The widow followed, determination in her eyes, holding her daughter close, refusing to let fear take control. They ran for what seemed like hours, weaving through rocks and alien trees, always keeping ahead of the patrol. Finally, Kale spotted the edge of a dense forest, a place where hunters would struggle to follow. "Almost there," he said, urging them forward. Their legs burned, lungs heaving, but hope propelled them. Every step took them closer to safety. Every breath felt like freedom. They reached the forest and slipped inside, the thick foliage hiding them instantly from view. Kale stopped to catch his own breath, scanning the surroundings for any sign of pursuit. All was quiet, the forest calm, save for the distant sound of the plains behind them. He allowed himself a small smile, the first in days, a sense of relief washing over him. The widow sank to the ground, holding her daughter close, tears flowing freely. We are safe," she whispered, voice trembling with gratitude. The child hugged Kale tightly, her small arms around his neck. "Thank you," she said softly. Kale nodded, emotion rising in his chest. "No one will hurt you again," he promised, his voice firm, unwavering. They moved deeper into the forest, finding a small hidden stream to rest and drink. Kale set up a temporary shelter, gathering materials and making it secure. "We have time now," he said, "We are free, but we must stay." "Careful," the widow nodded, her trust in Cale absolute. And the child's eyes shone with a sense of wonder and relief. As night fell, the forest glowed with alien lights, soft and serene. Cale watched over them. Feeling the weight of responsibility lift slightly, he knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time, they had a chance, a real chance to live. They were no longer pawns in someone else's game, no longer at the mercy of hunters or traders. Cale sat quietly, the child asleep in her mother's arms. Looking at the stars shining through the forest canopy, he thought of the auction, the betrayal, the long journey, and the many dangers they had survived. And he knew one thing clearly. As long as he led them, nothing could break their bond, nothing could destroy the hope they had fought so hard to reach. The forest was quiet, safe for now. But Cale remained vigilant, ready for whatever came next. Their escape was complete, but their freedom was just beginning. Together, they would face the future, stronger, united, and unafraid. And for the first time in a long time, the widow and her daughter felt the warmth of protection, the comfort of care, and the freedom that comes only from being truly safe.